Ahoy there, pirates. Believe it or not, I wasn't quite done with the Xbox showcase. No, I had a really good conversation with CJ, and a lot of information has come out since that showcase regarding Halo. So I did the only thing I could think of doing, which was grab a really good buddy of mine, Haas Sost, who is, in my opinion, one of the best Halo players and one of the most informed Halo players. He's been playing Halo games since it came out. He's competed in MLG, and overall is just a really knowledgeable guy when it comes to the game, the guns, the feel, how it should be, what he's looking forward to. So I wanted to bring him on to talk about some of the information that we got in Halo this last period between literally the Thursday that the showcase started and the recording time of this episode, which is Sunday. So if you're listening to this in the middle of the week and wondering, well, why didn't it come out earlier? I wanted to put a little time between the Keelhauled episode and the last Shoreleave episode. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Haas is a great guy, so I would really love it if you guys went over to his stream and followed him to give him some love from the Keelhauled community. He plays a lot of shooters, so if you're into any like Call of Duty Warzone, he's played Overwatch in the past. He plays a lot of Halo. He does do Destiny from time to time, or at least I knew he used to do it. But he's also played Sea of Thieves, and it's because of our community and me pushing him to play Sea of Thieves that he's jumped into that as well too. So if you're looking for more Halo information or some more Halo conversation, you're going to get about an hour's worth out of us over all the information that we got and kind of our honest feelings about how we feel about the actual trailer and what we're hoping for and what we can expect with the series and the franchise as a whole going into the Xbox Series X. So thank you guys for listening. Enjoy this episode. And again, make sure you check out the social note or the social media links in the show notes to follow Haas Sost. Later. Hi, man. I wanted to bring you on because, like, of all the people I know, there's a lot of people out there that are big Halo fans. And I wanted to talk to you because I feel like I got a chance to talk to one of my buddy CJ and stuff, but he and I are pretty casual Halo fans. And this seems to, the whole Xbox showcase seems to really have rubbed people the wrong way. I remember watching your stream and we were commenting on it and stuff. And, we've had a lot of discussions in your Discord since then, but we've also had a lot of information come out from Microsoft since the reveal because of the reception. So just kind of off the bat, I kind of was hoping that you could kind of like talk through where your fandom is with Halo and how it kind of got started.
Wow. So I've been a Halo fan since 2001. It kind of harkens back to my stepbrother. He played it at Life Group at one of his church gatherings, and all I wanted to play was a basketball game and Medal of Honor on the original Xbox. And so I saw Halo and I was like, this looks stupid. It looks like I don't know what I saw on that box art, but I thought it was like a futuristic chariot combat fighter, like Roman
That's
chariot.
Hilarious.
And he's like, no, trust me, you'll like it if you like shooting guns in video games. So I was like, okay, cool. I liked GoldenEye. I liked Perfect Dark, all those kind of more classic shooter games. So we gave it a shot.
The OGs.
Yeah, the OGs, right. And I mean, I dabbled in Doom. I come from a very conservative, valued home. So Doom was at my friend's house kind of video game, but
bless the parents of the kids that didn't care, man.
Yeah, right. Exposed me.
That was how I got into Diablo that way. Like you got into Doom that way. Like there were parents out there that did not care. And I want to just say, if you've got kids, maybe not be so strict on what they play.
Yeah,
maybe they have a friend that needs a friend.
Exactly. So
who's gonna let them play this?
We rented it from Blockbuster because we weren't allowed to buy it. My stepmom was adamant that we could have 2 Xbox games in the house. That was it. And so I don't understand that logic, but that was the
One
rule.
per kid.
Yeah, right. And so we rented it, and like me and my stepbrother and my dad was just kind of like watching on the couch behind us, and we played until like 2 in the morning. He was like, go to bed at 10 o'clock in like an hour. And we went to
Mhm.
bed, and we left off right at the when you introduced to the flood. And
Oh God.
like,
Oh.
gosh, well, I was, let's see, this was 2001. I was like 13, 14 at the time.
Oh
And like
man.
my mind was blown at this point. I'm like, there's something that I am going to die to in this video game. Like, I don't understand how I am going to beat this thing. Like, games were intimidating still to me at that point. And
Yeah.
so we went, we went to bed because we got yelled at like 2 in the morning. And so we went up to the room, and we were just talking the whole night, and just, oh my gosh, we have to get back down there. And so we finally ended up going back down, I think it's 6 a.m. And we end up
Wow.
playing the rest of that campaign in that morning, much to my stepmother's displeasure. We finished that game that next morning, and like ever since then. And then, then I went to my mom, and I was like, Mom, I need an Xbox. I got one that Christmas. I got all my PS1 games together, took them to EB Games before GameStop had purchased them. And
Yeah.
I got my $30 copy of Halo, and I never looked back. Like, by sophomore year in high school, I was Halo kid. And
That's awesome.
it's like, so I've been a very adamant Halo fan. I competed at the end of Halo 1 all the way to the early Halo 3, like in the MLG. Like, I was mainly online. I couldn't really afford to go to a
Yeah.
lot of tournaments, but that was a scene I cared about. So I kind of look at a lot of like what we saw on Thursday through a more player versus player lens, because I'm like, how is this going to work? I need to see this in action in that form, because you can have something in PvE and it'll be fun and enjoyable. Like, I think that's what makes games like Destiny and Doom so much fun, is you just have these tools at your arsenal that you can use. But once you start bringing in like a competition element to it, the sandbox kind of needs to change, because you're not going up against AI. And
Right.
so I like to look at it in that way. And especially now how esports has kind of grown, you kind of have to look at these games also like, if I was a viewer, am I going to be able to tune in and at least get the basic concepts down, or is there going to be so much going on so quickly that I'm just going to be lost in the mess? And so that's kind of how I look at it
Mm.
now. I haven't liked the last couple Halo games to the standard of the original Bungie, but I still think there are elements in each one that have really been great for the franchise. But I don't think 343 has put the whole thing together in a way that kind of like could capture the hearts and minds of like the broad gamer audience again, since it did in like Halo 2 and Halo 3.
So pretty much they've got the ingredients that they just don't have the recipe, kind of.
Right. Like, I think that'd be a great way of putting that.
So I'm curious because my Halo experience dropped off after 2 because of PC gaming and like MMOs and stuff. So
Yeah.
for me, like I always appreciated watching the MLG tournaments and stuff, because it was really like, it was cool. It was really awesome to see like competitive sports on the computer and just be like, oh my God, this is like people actually getting paid money for playing games. This
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yep.
And it's not like they don't have to submit like a bug report afterwards. So I kind of like this.
Yeah.
So I used to watch Halo MLG stuff all the time, and I had no clue like which version they were playing or what maps were what, but I could hear the call outs and I had fun with that. So when I look at Halo as a series, I'm more interested in like the single player co-op experience, because that's how I played it. I always played it with someone.
Yep.
You know, even when it was the first game, we had the the LAN parties. We would go and do LAN parties all the time, and then we would talk about kind of the zeitgeist behind the campaign and the whole story and stuff. So I watched a video that IGN put out that covers like the story from beginning to end in 22 minutes, which really impressed me, but also totally spoiled everything for the games that I haven't played, just because I wanted to talk to you about this. With Halo Infinite, I want to kind of nail down, like, you're talking about the multiplayer, and we didn't get a chance to see that. If they bring the multiplayer to stream it to video or show video of it and kind of give you like a rundown of it, is that kind of really like the main thing for you? Do you care much about the story, I guess, is what I'm getting at?
So I love the Halo campaigns. Like, that's what I fell in love with first. Multiplayer is just what has led to so many friendships, like lifelong friendships, and Halo's kind of at the core of that. So the campaign is
Mhm.
always going to be important to me. Like, that's always what I play first. I always beat the campaign on Legendary before I get into multiplayer, despite the group of friends that I've had since 2001 to 2005 jumping right into multiplayer. Campaign's always like that thing. I need to know. I need to know what's going on. So
Mhm.
when when the conversation starts out, like, multiplayer doesn't get spoiled, campaigns do, and stories. So I always want to be ahead of that as much as I can, especially as I've gotten
Right.
older. That's so much harder to do because my time is more limited. So
Yeah.
I always want to jump on that first. So I care about the campaigns. I care about the story. There is so much expanded lore now that I can't really keep up. Like, I've read a handful of the books, but I think there are over 30 books now of expanded lore, which go from like centuries before any of the events all the way to current events. And so I kind of lean on YouTubers to kind of piece that together for me before I go in, like, hey, here's a story so far, kind of like what you got with that IGM video. Just to kind
Yeah.
of like, okay, because maybe this thing happened outside of the game that is going to be critical to the game. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I think 343 kind of got a little too ahead of themselves with putting so many of these characters that are key to the franchise that has moved forward in those books as a way to introduce them.
Mhm.
Because then you have a portion of the audience who's like, oh yeah, that guy. But then you have this other audience who are like, who's this? Where the Covenant and the Flood? Like, that's all, and those are the only people I care about shooting. And
Yeah.
so, like, they got a little bit too far, and they've kind of, after Halo 5, they were like, okay, we're gonna kind of scale it back and simplify the stories. I'm interested to see how they're gonna do that in a way that doesn't upset those people that take those time to read all the expanded knowledge. I mean, it's like Star Wars in a way. I mean, a lot of people will say Halo is video games version of Star Wars just because of, which I don't, you know, people
I
will
don't
get a little defensive,
it's
maybe
a
not over that, but
Yeah, it's everyone's got their fandom. I think that the easy relatable terms that you could throw to Halo would be a good way to say, like, all right, well, this is Xbox's Star Wars.
yeah,
Uh,
that'd be a safe
you
way of
know,
doing it.
but yeah, that so I'm kind of curious because I was watching a couple of videos, and some of the comments were coming from Chris Lee and some of the marketing and people at 343. They were saying that if you're a diehard and you've been digging into the lore and all the books, then you have nothing to worry about. Like, they're
Mhm.
still going to address all the stuff that happened in the previous games in the expanded universe,
Yeah.
but they're trying to rein this in so that they kind of focus it more on, like, the one person, like Master Chief and the dude, the beard dude in the ship, who's going to be kind of like the weighted anchor for the
Mhm.
person,
The
as far as
pilot is
like
what they're calling him. He kinda has a
the pilot.
nickname in the community as Brohammer, but,
That's
that harkens back to the original pilot in Halo Combat Evolved, who was Foehammer, or
oh,
Forehammer,
nice.
Foehammer, Forehammer. I always get it mixed up,
That's
but
good.
yeah.
I like it. So Brohammer's going to be kind of our moral grounding, I would assume, for us wanting to get away from all this chaos, and Master Chief's going to be the one that is constantly pushing us further deeper into that. Are you happy that it feels like we're getting back to just Master Chief on a new Halo, and he's going to have to deal with it's not the Covenant because it's a sect of the Covenant?
Yeah, it's when the Covenant split, the Banished formed. So after
Banished, that's what it was.
so you haven't played Halo 3?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I won't spoil it, but eventually the Covenant split, and
I've that video
oh
spoiled
yeah,
everything
that's
for
true.
me.
Okay,
So
so after the Prophets and the Covenant split there, the Banished was formed under Atriox, and so he was the big baddie in Halo Wars 2, and they also have some comics about him, and he's an awesome villain. I hope he finds his way into Infinite because I loved him. So,
that feels like that. I mean, that's kind of the suggestion that they're making with this video, right? Like he's like, you know what, we're done doing what we're gonna do. I just want one really awesome fight. It's kind of like Highlander. Like there's one
yeah,
really kick butt immortal out there, and he's basically calling out Connor McLeod, and he's like, look, are you going to come fight me or what? Because I'm going to kill everyone that you love if you don't come fight me.
it's kind of like an Agent Smith versus Neo kind of thing. Like,
yes, that's probably a lot more better. That's probably a much newer reference.
you have to have that fight.
Yeah, and he's going to do everything it takes. He's confident in his abilities, and he has no concern. So a question that I had for you was, and if you don't know, don't worry, I'm just curious. In the video, there was a scene where it showed the ship with Brohammer and Master Chief, and there was this big diagram around with all these little pieces, and they were all labeled Infinite, and then they all said deceased.
Yes.
Do you know what that was about? Like, can you break that down for me?
I originally, the first time I saw that, I was thinking Infinite, which is the largest ship in the UNSC fleet, was that destroyed?
Mm,
In one of the more well-known YouTuber lore guys, he seems to think like it was all kind of like escape pods and all that kind of like breaking apart from the ship, and
oh
so
man.
those were all destroyed, maybe as the ship was
Oh
coming to its demise. So that's the impression I got. And I mean, originally I thought, oh, that's the big chunks of the ship that are offline now because the whole thing has been blown up. But he
man.
kind of seems to think that the ship was releasing all their escape pods and ships and everything. So they're all labeled
Yeah.
as infinite and they were destroyed. So I'm curious. I
Interesting.
am curious about that as well because that's a
It's
lot.
kind of,
That's a
yeah,
lot of
it's
people
kind of
that could be done.
suggestive. Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder, like, because looking at it, if that's the case, then I'm like thinking in my head, they are truly alone. Like they will not get any backup unless something crazy happens and they're able to find someone to help them out.
And
So
that's one thing I'm kind of curious about because in Halo 1 and 2, if you played co-op, you were a clone of Master Chief. You weren't there in the cinematics or anything. So then in
mhm,
Halo 3, they made you if you were player 2, 3, or 4, you were the Arbiter and two other elite. And then in Halo
mm,
4, you were Master Chief and clones of Master Chief again. Then Halo 5,
yeah,
you were part of Osiris or Blue Team. So I'm kind of curious because they couch co-op is 2 players and online is going to be 4. So I'm kind of curious, are you going to be a Marine, an ODST, another Spartan, or are we going back to you're a clone of Master Chief, you're there, but you're not going to matter in cinematics, you're not going to be present in any cinematics, which I kind of prefer that because I liked the lone hero kind of element. I did like the team side of it, but for Master
yeah.
Chief, I always just kind of liked him, like the last of his kind of story arc that they had originally in the first 2 Halo games.
So we're looking at an open world here. What if they did? And I have no reason to believe that this is actually what's going to happen. This is just kind of a me thinking it through as we kind of talk. A way that they could kind of explain this lore wise. If you come across other ships, because I mean they've got in the demo we've got 3 anti-air cannons on this Halo that are active and ready to shoot down the ship that you're in with Brohammer. I can't imagine that for one, those are the only anti-air cannons, and for two, that you're the only ship that didn't get down on the ground or at least get
Right.
shot down with survivors. So I'm wondering, lore wise, if it would be kind of cool if as you're kind of experiencing the game and you go along, player 2, player 3, or the multiplayer gets pulled in as you unlock different checkpoints in the game that bring you to other people and are like, hey, you join the team, help me out, or you have Brohammer kind of following you around as you go out, and that kind of acts as your co-op, so they can kind of explain it lore wise, similar to what it sounds like was in 3.
Yeah, somebody tweeted out a picture of Master Chief and the Warthog, and it looks like there is somebody in the passenger seat or in the turret of his Warthog. So I'm under the impression definitely somebody else survived, or
Yeah.
other people survived, and I don't expect Brohammer pilot gentleman to be much of a combat ally as much as he is going to be a narrative like overcomes, kind of like giving you information the way Cortana has in the previous Halo
Mm-hmm.
games. So I
So
I
you
think
feel
other
like
people have
that's the case?
survived. Yeah, for sure. I
Okay.
mean, in CE they kind of did that same thing. Like you kind of felt like everybody died when you landed on the Halo rim, but then it was like instantly you're like, let's go pick up some guys that made it, and so you went and
Yeah.
grabbed them. So kind of hoping that was
Yeah.
the case.
They're probably gonna. I'm sure they'll probably work it out pretty well. I want to touch on the obvious thing that everyone's been talking on, because when I watch this, I don't notice the stuff that you guys notice. I mean, I know you guys were talking about the guns and the feel and stuff like that. From the looks of the demo, and including like the digital foundry stuff, stuff that Paris was talking about, some of the videos I've watched, it feels like we have to kind of take this demo with a grain of salt, with the understanding that this was probably going to be the E3 demo that everyone was going to get their hands on. And they were probably going to have a whole bunch of people at the demo stations answering questions for the news pundits, so that you didn't just have a stream of a video and then have to wait for all this information from 343 to come out post video after everyone's already kind of made their opinions.
Right.
So given light of the new information for the game and for the demo that we saw, how do you feel now about like the graphics and what was kind of expressed in that demo?
So in that demo, first impression, like watching the live stream, I was very underwhelmed visually. Like there were some
Okay.
nice animations that you saw, like the explosions and like reflections and things like that when you got to see them, but I was underwhelmed. But then after the briefing kind of ended, they uploaded 2 videos on YouTube, one with the gameplay demo, the 8-minute demo,
Mm-hmm.
and I bumped that up to 4K. I don't know if it was you or somebody else said, "Put it into 4K and watch it that way." And also the problem for a lot of people is streamers were streaming it, so people were watching streamers stream a stream, so you have, like,
Yeah.
a ton of compression happening, so it's gonna look worse for every time that somebody's copying and pasting that image out. And
Yep.
so I do think a lot of first impressions were pretty rough in that regard. Um, I'm glad I went back and watched it in 4K because it did help me feel a little bit better. There were still some things that I'm wondering, okay, how much are they giving up to kind of open this world up? Because you do have to make resource sacrifices. The more you open up a game and remove loading times and stuff like that, things are going to be scaled back a little bit. No matter how powerful your hardware is, that's going to happen at some point.
Especially if you're pushing 4K. If you're shooting for
Correct.
4K 60, hardware is still at the point where, like, I don't see too much. I mean, just look at on Twitch. Twitch doesn't really support streaming 4K.
No, not at all. I mean,
So
they only stream the briefing in 1080 60 at top
yeah,
level. So,
yeah. So like what most people are going to see is not indicative of what the end
right.
hardware and video is going to actually produce. So I can see the trade-off there with the open world and having dynamic lighting. They've already stated that there's going to be a patch post-launch to introduce ray tracing, which I know is kind of the marketing terms being thrown around with this generation of consoles.
Yep.
So we know that we know a few things. It's going to be a 10-year game that they're shooting for. It's on Game Pass, and that's going to be the main way that they probably make their money from it, is just people having Game Pass to have access for the multiplayer. And we know that this was an older demo that was released back, or at least captured, according to the people that Alana Pierce was talking about, that it's from January of this year, which kind of fits in with when that vertical slice needed to be finished so that they could have it ready for E3.
Yeah.
With the fidelity differences between this version and previous games, knowing that this is going to be an open world game and it's going to have a game as a service aspect to it, how do you feel about them being able to kind of work with patches to try and improve the look and the feel if anything isn't quite up to like a standard?
I know they're capable of. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. They have Microsoft's money behind them, and Microsoft will, when Microsoft wants to will something into being a success, they will do everything they can to do it. And Halo is kind of like that Halo is their premier success for the Xbox console. So I totally think they're going to do it. I think we've seen it in other games. Rainbow Six is one that quickly always comes to my mind. Gears of War, when they brought up the Xbox One X to enhance visuals. Like you've seen it across the board. They're gonna be able to do it. Timeline, I'm curious about. I'm also kind of, there's some texture things I'm kind of curious how they're gonna solve, because some things felt incomplete, and a lot of people are like, well, they got months to go until release, and that is true. And then the 1 minute video they released after the 8 minute demo, that did look noticeably different, like in improved ways. And then Digital
So
Foundry mentioned the lighting. So I
yeah,
think there's a lot of things that are they're capable of doing, but I don't like the excuse, but it is a reality that these teams aren't together. Like, they're not looking at these things. Communication is going to be slower. Moving these files back and forth is going to be slower than,
yeah.
within an office. So things are different. I don't like the excuse, but it is valid. So
Yeah, anyone working for home knows the frustration of losing an entire day to Zoom meetings.
correct. So
Yeah.
I think they're going to be able to pull it off. I think people are going to be very critical of this game. Like, Halo is in a very, they're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't position in my eyes. Like,
Yeah.
they've kind of, in some ways, they've kind of put themselves in this corner. In other ways,
Hmm.
fans, the expectation of the brand has been so high, and I kind of feel like overall has been kind of beaten down onto people. So that a lot of people, this is like, we need this to be the hit. Like, we need this to be the game again. And that's a lot of pressure
Yeah.
on a
So
studio or a brand.
So you're talking about like Xbox fans in general wanting this to be a big hit so that it's a win for the justified fandom.
Correct. Yeah.
So that they
Absolutely.
feel like they can point to this and be like, oh yeah, well, take a look at this, Sony.
Yeah, like,
You fanboys.
this is our reason to own an Xbox. I mean, Halo was the
Yeah.
original reason to own an Xbox, probably through 2009, 2010, or whenever Modern Warfare came out, so 2007. Like Halo
Mhm.
was the reason to own an Xbox. And then after Halo 3, it kind of lost that position of power. And that's good. Microsoft needs to diversify. And I think they're finally starting to do that. You can't hang your entire brand on one thing, but it is nice to have that feather in the cap. But
It's true.
there's a ton
And
of
I
pressure on them to pull this
I
off.
think and that's kind of the trouble, right? Like you're touching on the thing that I think really kind of hits home, the expectation from the players when it's a beloved franchise like Halo compared to what a studio is capable of and how, you know, it's kind of like when we look at remakes for movies. You know, somebody has a passion for a movie, they want to remake it, they want to tell their story of it, but they're fighting against everyone who's ever loved the same movie that you love
Yep.
to try and get this thing made and have it received well. Like I can't imagine wanting to try and remake a movie because all it would just be me trying to tell other people that my opinion of what I think the movie could be isn't good enough, but I'm only doing it because I love the original so much.
Yeah. Like taking over Batman after Christopher Nolan. That's not an easy position to be in.
Yeah,
To make Batman your own without kind of pooing on what Christopher Nolan did, because to a
yeah.
lot of people, Christopher Nolan's Batman is the real life version of Batman now.
Yeah, less comic booky, like Michael Keaton's still going to be my Batman, but I
Yeah.
would say that Christopher Nolan painted the world better than Tim Burton or Joel Schumacher, and I think Bungie's done that with Halo. I think Bungie's gone on to do some really good work with Destiny,
Hmm.
and I think they kind of have the idea of what kind of a shooter they want. I wanted to talk to you about a little more niche topic. So the guns in Halo, how did you feel about the weapons that they showed off? Because they basically went through dropping a weapon every 15 seconds for another one to get those all shown
Right.
off. Are you happy with how the guns are right now? Do they look good? Do they feel close enough to what they originally were? Like, give me some thoughts on that.
So visually, I think they look really good. They look extremely clean, which I know that's an artistic choice. I kind of like seeing my guns get a little grit on them. But they've already
Mm-hmm.
kind of like hinted that skins are going to be coming to the game. Which hey, I'm
Interesting.
I'm all for. There's like a
That's cool.
Boomco Nerf gun that if you purchase, you get that skin for the AR. So like I'm all for that kind of stuff. So I think that's probably why we're seeing partially why we're seeing the cleaner look of the guns. I think they look good. They seem to have a good diversity between them. So you start off with the assault rifle, and then you get the VK78 or the pistol. He pulls the pistol out, which it's a minor thing, but like the iconic look of the pistol, you have the tiny little red dot on the back of the gun, and
Yeah.
like that was missing. But I mean that's probably like a 5 minute fix. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping we see that come back. But then you see the VK78. Uh, so it looks like they're finding roles for different guns. So guns can do different things. And to me in Halo 5, too many of the guns could do it all. Like they didn't have a
Mm,
role as much as like guns were better than other guns and could be
yeah.
more diversified, but the role of weapons seemed to kind of dissipate a little bit.
Hmm.
So I think they did a good job getting back to that. I also think the shooting mechanics, I think they finally kind of figured out how to adopt what a lot of modern popular shooters are doing with the hit markers, with how bloom or recoil patterns, things like that, shoot bullet spray patterns
Yeah.
are doing for just from what we're seeing. I think it's going to be a good balance for that kind of stuff. Um,
Hmm.
like you got that brute rifle with like a blade on it, a little nail gun. I forget what that thing is called. That looks
That was
awesome.
cool. That was really cool.
Um, so I and then the new shotgun, which within the Halo community is a little bit of a controversy because people like the retro shotgun look, but apparently this is
Yeah.
going to be replacing it. But
Okay.
you
So
know,
they're changing some things, but
yeah, I'm a
overall, you
fan. I'm a fan of it. To me, the guns and the gun play and the gun mechanics, I was like, this is kind of what Halo is needed to kind of like, hey, I got my boxing gloves on. I'm ready to fight some of the big dogs again. That's what
mhm.
I saw through for all the gunplay in the game. That's what I was saying.
So, how do you feel about this gunplay compared to, say, like most modern day shooters, where it feels like there's quick reload, there's a little bit of recoil. And, I noticed that a lot of these guns don't use aim down sights or ADS,
Hmm.
and I'm curious. Like I'm playing through Reach right now, and it's a pain point for me coming off the back of most other shooters like Warzone or
Right.
Destiny or I'm so used to using an ADS to kind of stabilize
Uh
my
huh.
shooting, and this doesn't feel like it has it. So do you think that that's going to be more of what Halo fans would want out of this game,
So
or do
they
you think that
so they had ADS in Halo 5. They just called it Smart Link. Um, Not a lot of people were big fans of it. Like the maybe that's not the right word because there's Halo fans, the vocal Halo fans, and then there's everybody else who doesn't
yeah,
make every opinion known online. But
interesting.
overall, it seems like people kind of, from what you can see online, I think people prefer the more classic Halo style where it's not aim down sight. Like you click and you're zoom, and then you unclick and you're unzoom. Um,
Gotcha.
so I think the vocal Halo fans are all about that. Um, but that is something that is always kind of been interesting to see how Halo's going to handle it. Maybe that's something they're using to kind of differentiate their shooter versus others. Is I mean,
Yeah,
it's subtle, but like you just said, like it's a pain for you because it's not something you're used to anymore or
yeah,
have been used to.
pretty much. Yeah,
But
it's
it
just
pops out to you when you're doing it.
yeah. It's so used to. I'm so used to having that. Like I can't tell you how many times I chucked grenades the other day while playing Reach, trying to ADS on a
Mhm.
target, and I was like, nope, that's a wasted grenade. Nope, that's a wasted grenade. Same problem, and it kept happening because I'm just not used to that being a thing. So, um, given the way that the weapons work, it feels like this is going to be kind of expected. I shouldn't really get used to or look for having ADS on these weapons. So it kind of takes me to some of the other features that it looks like we're going to be getting, which is the drop shield and
Uh-huh.
the grappling hook. Those feel very awesome. It feels like it's not Lifeline. What's the other dude's name in Apex? The robot
There's
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder has a grapple hook,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
So
uh,
that's kind of what this
Gibraltar
feels
has the
like.
big dome shield.
Yeah, I'm getting the sense that people who liked like Nova from Overwatch or Pathfinder from Apex, that's kind of how this grapple hook feels in the game, and it feels like that this is going to be a very proactive tool that you're going to be using. So I'm curious, like, how do you feel about that going into this game? Do you think that's going to be a real awesome thing, or do you think they're just going to, because it feels like they're trying to build this into the actual gunplay, kind of like with Doom
Yeah.
Eternal.
So I especially for a campaign side, I'm all for it. Like, give me more
Mm-hmm.
ways to traverse. Let me have new ways to explore. Get to that ledge up there, and that I can't do from just jumping. So I'm cool with that. In multiplayer, In their blog post, they said these things are going to be pickups, which is
Yeah.
more of the Halo 3 model. And then people forged it into Halo 4 or Halo Reach's multiplayer where these things were pickup. I'm all for that
Hmm.
because then I can go in and forge if, me and my friends or my community are like, hey, let's have everybody with grapple hooks. Everybody can have a grapple
Yeah.
hook. Or hey, we don't want any of this. We just want our guide to walk across the battlefields and engage each other without any tools. Let's just see who's got the best gun. You know, you
Yeah.
have that. So I like that because I think you're going to find these things in campaign and it's going to be fun to kind of, it's always fun when a game like this comes out and it has these kind of mechanics because people find ways to cheese it and like do those crazy like highlight moments where I grapple onto a ledge and then next thing you know I'm swinging across the map and
Yeah.
I've got so much momentum my guy doesn't stop going. Like I like those kinds of things because it's a new way to explore. There's a new way to experience the game. There's like speed running has always been a big part of the Halo community on the campaign side. So that's always cool to kind of see how are those guys going to use all these little equipments and just the funniest looking way is like drop a shield and maybe if you walk on it before it pops up properly, it flings you into the sky or I like
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. It's because it's fun.
Yeah.
It changes the gameplay. It changes everybody's experience. You can't have the same experience twice.
Right.
So
That's
I like
that's
it.
definitely. I wanted to. Oh man, there's so much I was going to dive into. So with the drop shield and being able to, so that's kind of, it reminds me of Reinhardt from Overwatch,
Right.
and I'm looking forward to seeing how that can be used in multiplayer as well. With them being able to fight over the weapons and speedrunners being able to break this with just being able to play around with physics, I'm curious to know. When you want to see, because assuming that there's going to be some stuff in August that they want to talk about, when do you want to see multiplayer, and how do you feel about them stating that they won't be able to do the flights for the beta testing the way they had originally planned, and that they're going to work on doing maybe more focused or selective beta flights to test out multiplayer?
So for the flight thing, that was the worst piece of news to come out on Thursday.
Hmm.
I just this is such a big game with so much importance, not only for Halo, but I feel like the Series X has a lot riding on this.
Hmm.
And months ago, I kind of did wonder, like, how are they gonna flight test this for a console that's not out? I mean, I trust Microsoft and their engineers and all that to get it right, but I just kind of felt this is a game they needed to get into players' hands in some capacity before the game launches to give them time to make some changes or let
Yeah.
players kind of know what they're getting because hey if it hits really good you got that word of mouth power behind you. If it
Hmm.
doesn't hit so great then you can at least be open to your community. Hey, thanks for we see what you're saying. A, B, C, and D are fixed, just like they're doing with Master Chief Collection as it's come to PC. They put these
Yeah.
flights out. They say, "Hey, here's what we do know," and then they get it into thousands of players' hands, and those players report things they're finding, and then they can come back and be like, "Hey, we fixed all these things. Oh, by the way, here it is." You're like, when it's ready, here it is. So
Yeah.
I just with all the changes, a new engine, all those kinds of things, I feel like it's really important. And the flight promise came after Master Chief Collection came out on Xbox. I don't know if you remember that, but that was like
So
that was a
yeah,
disaster for the franchise.
I
Uh,
had to. I wasn't involved with that, so I missed out on that. So for people that like me that aren't familiar, as far as I understand it, they promised that a beta would come out prior to every every game release being for the Master Chief Collection, if I'm understanding that correct.
So back when Master Chief Collection came on the Xbox, the promise was Halo 1, 2, 3, 4, just as you remember them 10 years ago, multiplayer and all. And so when it came out, matchmaking didn't work. You couldn't join lobbies. It was like
Mm,
a nightmare. And it lasted about a month until they kind of got it. I won't even say fixed. They just kind of like threw a band-aid on it and called it good. And
right.
so Bonnie Ross, the lead at 343, came out in a blog and was like, "Hey, we hear you. This shouldn't have happened, and it did. And from now on, here's all the things we as a studio promise you, the players. Every Halo game that comes out, we're going to have a beta for you guys to experience, to test, to help us." And so that
Hmm.
has been a promise. We got that a year ahead for Halo 5. Ma- Um, Halo Wars 2 got one. I think Halo Wars 2 actually got multiple betas,
Hmm.
and then Master Chief Collection as it's come to PC, same thing. We've had flights for each and every version of the game. And while they were fixing Master Chief Collection on Xbox before this PC, they had flights for those as well. So we've now it's become like an expectation, like, hey, we're going to be able to have our voice heard by the studio, and then for them to kind of like pull that back before this huge game that people have been waiting 5 years for, it just kind of hurts and brings up those feelings of like mistrust again with the studio. And is that fair or not remains to be seen until this game is in our hand. But it
Yeah.
definitely it's like
S-
it's like when you get in a relationship after a bad relationship and the new person says something that like the words like, well, you need to trust me, and you're like,
mhm.
like that's kind of the feeling that for me I have with it. It's like you haven't earned
Yeah.
that yet. So
So I'm curious because coming from my perspective, I'm looking at it at the lens of how the entire industry as a whole has had to cope with the fact that a pandemic is literally ravaging our country and forcing everyone into seclusion and working from home.
100%.
If this was any other situation where games couldn't be developed outside of a studio, I basically just assume that we would not have gotten any games. They would have had to push back the console launches. They would have had to push back every game released this year, and everyone would have had to just kind of suck it up and deal with it.
Hmm.
So as far as I see this, I'm looking at two sides, and I'm wondering if this is the side, or if my perspective is one that can maybe help people that are feeling betrayed or justified in their kind of, I'm trying to think what the word is, being tepid or I can't think of what the word is.
Timid?
Not really timid, being timid in their trust with 343 with the franchise. And I'm kind of wondering, like, given the situation where we're actually getting a console launch this year, we're getting two console launches this year. It's crazy. Everyone's having to work from home. If it came down to me knowing that they've literally had to start making this game from home, and it being a service that is available on Game Pass, I'm not going to have to spend $60 on this game. I probably would, but I'm not going to have to because I've already got Game Pass. So I'm sold. If I want to play this for $15 for the first month and see how it goes, I'll decide then. So knowing that there's not a huge upfront cost outside of Game Pass for this, because I can still play it on my PC. I can still play it on my Xbox One X. I won't have to buy into an Xbox Series X just yet. And knowing that they've had to build this from there, does it make sense, like, to kind of look at this and be like, okay, these aren't the best. This isn't the best situation, but this is a much better situation than just not getting the game.
Um, personally, like me, just I put so much importance on Halo and this coming wave of the new era for Xbox. I put a
Mhm.
ton of weight on it. And I know it sounds kind of silly, but I would almost take like, hey, if it takes more time given the times. I get that. Then let's hold the game back for a minute. There's still launch window. There's day and
Yeah.
date launch. There's launch window. If a beta pushes us back, but it's still in that launch window, I would
Mhm.
still support that because I don't want to see this game hurt the brand of Xbox or Halo. Like
Yeah.
like
That's a tricky situation because it's like launch without the game or
you're
launch with the
right.
game.
But then that kind
Launch
of
with the
like
game.
I say that as a person that kind of I like Sony's approach to this coming gen. Like, hey, the new gen is a new gen, and that's the way it's going to be. But I also like Xbox's like, hey, there is more powerful hardware here for you to
Yeah.
use if you want to invest in. But great. But hey, also all your games are coming with you, so
Mhm.
we can keep playing those games we've been playing. Thankfully, on Xbox One 360 or even as far back on OG Xbox titles limited, but having those things available to us to kind of like hold us over, especially as some
Mhm.
may get the extra enhancement for the new hardware. And there's going to be, I hope, other games besides Halo coming out at the same time. Like, I feel like you can kind of get by just given Microsoft's current strategy. I would
Yeah.
love for Halo to be there day and date, but at the same time, I just ready when it's ready, I do think needs to be respected. Like as a fan of games,
Mhm. Mhm.
I want to get my grimy hands on every hot looking game that comes out. I mean, how many times has Cyberpunk been delayed now? 3 or 4. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I trust that this game is going to be better for it,
Yeah.
meaning my experience will be better for it. So I'm going to support that decision right now. It sucks, but hey, do your thing because I want my experience to be great because I know you care about the experience I'm going to have and I care about the experience I'm going to have. So, hey, make it great and we're good to go. So,
I always have an interesting kind of I always have a weird feeling when I hear what you're saying because a lot of people are saying like, hey, you know, I don't want this game till it's ready. Put out the beta so I can test the unfinished product.
mhm.
And I'm like, wait, so you want to play a version that's not done because you want the done version to be delayed so that it can be the done version,
I
but
think
you'd rather
because the
just
mass is going to play the done version. So
right.
if the hardcore passionate base can get their hands on it and kind of like give feedback, now there are obviously with any beta, there's the people that just get it and don't provide anything except for they're playing it and you know the developer can gather that data as it is.
Yeah.
But I do think getting the incomplete version is can be a good thing if they're at a point where they can actually take some of that feedback and do something with it, kind of like how I alluded earlier, where like, hey, you know, maybe we can't get it at ship, but it is something we know that fans are kind of hinting at. Now we'll also have a masses get their hands on it and see if it also is an issue for the masses or if it's kind of like an issue more for the hardcore base. Because
Yeah.
I do think it's important to kind of make sure your hardcore base is taken care of, but you do also you got to spread those wings open and kind of let some new
Bring
people
everyone else
in.
in.
Yeah, right.
So I'm kind of excited in this because if you're saying this, then as far as I see it, there's no hard time on this. Like we still didn't get a release time. It's holiday 2020, which,
Right.
as far as I can tell, could be up until December 25th for most people.
Yep.
So it's not like, a lot of, myself included, a lot of us think that it's going to be November for the
Yep,
launch,
that's
just
where
because
I'm
of,
putting it.
yeah, a lot of us are looking at the other release dates that are coming and stuff, and they're saying that it's going to be in November. I don't think I've seen anything confirmed for just the new gens that isn't being supported on current gens that is got a date. Everything that's new for the new consoles is still kind of launch window, wherever that window could be. So as far as I'm concerned, we still have August, September, October, and November for them to crunch on this game before the console release in December, potentially.
Yeah, I'm kind of
that's when it's
expecting
coming
early
out.
November, to be perfectly honest. I think like that first week, November, I think a lot of people are going to be kind of steering clear of Cyberpunk on the 19th, except for Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
For some reason, they chose that date, which do your thing, but
There's going to be the fans that
oh
want to
yeah,
play a Viking, and
absolutely.
then there's the fans that are going to want to play a Cyber Viking.
Yep.
It's totally up to your aesthetic. But I mean, look at Doom and Animal Crossing. They both did really, really well. Most people bought both, and everyone was just like, all right, well,
Pretty
I'll play it when I
pleased.
play it.
You're right.
So overall, just looking at Halo from this standpoint, it's open world, it's a 10-year game, it's getting back to the feeling of just being Master Chief on an island with impossible odds to go against this dude Atriarch. No, is it Atriarch? No, what's the dude's name?
Ephraim. I haven't figured out. Ephraim.
Okay, we'll go with Ephraim. If he had hair, I'd just call him Afro, but and he doesn't have a good set of hair, kind of like me, so I kind of relate with him. Anyway, overall, the series looks like they're trying to build a really good experience that will give you a reason to come back beyond multiplayer.
Yes.
As time goes on, are you happy to see that?
Yes. As a person that doesn't like, I usually get all the campaign achievements and then I'm done with it. So
Yeah.
if there's new things to explore and they are able to continuously add them, especially for 10 years, and it sounds like they could even add new stories, I'm thinking and like an ODST 2 kind of thing, and they can like just kind of put it under this infinite umbrella. I think that's great because means there's new ways to explore, there's new stories to be told. So there's a reason for me to go back and kind of take those breaks from multiplayer, but also stay invested in their Halo ecosystem that they're putting out. And I think that's been kind of a thing as the industry has gotten so much more competitive since, to me, my golden era of Halo 1 through 3, where most people only had one or two games a year, versus now like there is a flood of games weekly hitting us. You know, if Halos are able to recapture my heart and give me more and more reasons to keep coming back and not look at all these other bright lights that are flashing down the street at me, I'm all for that, and I'm all in support of that because if it's going to work on me, I know it's going to work on other people too, and that means there's more people being invested in something I love as well. So I'm in full support of at least the messaging that they're saying that they're aiming for right now.
So what was in this demo and the information that we've seen outside of getting a chance to get your hands on multiplayer that you want to see come to the Halo series?
Controversial, but I want battle royale. I think I think Halo just has all the lore elements, the weapon elements to really make it work and do something unique. And not also unique, but I think we've seen what it's done for Call of Duty this last year. Like I liked Modern Warfare as a whole, but I was just kind of ready for that battle royale edge to it. So I
Mm-hmm.
I think Halo could do something similar. It's a big brand behind it. You're doing one of these like independent studio battle royale pushes that a lot of people are like, well, look at that one, it flopped. Yeah, they also
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the money that Activision, Microsoft, Epic, all these larger studios are going to be able to put into it to make it something truly gamers would love. So I would love battle royale. Firefight is a classic Halo mode that I would love to see return. Um,
Mhm.
and then in Halo 5 they had Warzone, which I think was a good mode that they didn't make. It just needed some different calls made in the design choice. It became a very like one-sided match mode, and so a lot
Yeah.
of people left it. So I think I would love to see them go at it. Now they would obviously have to change the name, given Call of Duty's taking of the
Warzone.
name Warzone and completely owning it now. But
Yeah.
I would like to see Halo take another crack at that. That was a fun. I think it was 24 or 32 players mode. So you had a lot of players on it, and I think Halo just the environments of Halo just seem like they're screaming for a large scale player mode beyond the big team battle of 8v8. So
Yeah.
I think a Warzone or Battle Royale or both would be fantastic things that seem to lend itself even better now that we're seeing a more open Halo presenting itself once again.
Well, the good news is this is the Slipstream engine, as they're calling it, brand new engine. They're anticipating a long lifespan for development for plenty of different things. They're going to run out of ideas for multiplayer at some point. So the likelihood of us seeing a Halo Battle Royale, depending on how the gaming culture as a whole takes to battle royale, like this may be a mode that fizzles out in another 2 years. We don't know. There could be a new version of a battle royale or a new type of battle royale that totally sweeps us by storm and it leaves Fortnite in the dust. There could
Right.
be a number of different things that we could be looking at over the next decade that we just can't anticipate. And I feel like if enough weight is behind the desire for this, if it's something that they look at and they find the spark of fun in it, and they can kind of take that and fan it a little bit, get some flames, and actually put out a battle royale, I could definitely see you being able to have that kind of a mode in Halo. And you're right, as far as I'm concerned, with all the different tools that are in the Halo franchise to be able to apply that to a battle royale mode and have it actually work out pretty well.
Yeah.
It definitely lends itself. So, but I wanted to kind of leave off on that. Was there anything from the showcase or Halo in general that you wanted to touch on before we sign off?
I feel like we touched on almost all of it. I do think there's one game that did stand out that wasn't Fable to me, and it was in their little ID showcase. It was like a little Viking side scroller. I got
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, I don't know why that game stood out to me so much, but it did. um, and it's just like a little snippet, but hey, bring more of those like indie style titles to it. Inside was one of my favorite games of this last gen as just a side scroller. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm all in support of those kinds of games kind of popping up here and there for all of us to enjoy.
Nice. Well, with that, I wanted to thank you for coming on, bringing your expertise to the discussion, because I had a really good talk with CJ last episode of Shoreleave, and I felt like I wanted to have your thoughts as someone who I respect as far as the Halo community comes. Your opinion matters a lot in my mind as far as being able to speak to what was good and what was bad, what was something that dedicated fans of the franchise were noticing and wanted to kind of address. And we've had a lot of good information come out since the showcase. So at the end of the day, I kind of take this with a grain of salt, because I'm assuming that Microsoft and 343 are trying to make the most interesting and most fun experience for us for Halo.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that your and everyone else's expectations are fulfilled. I really hope
For
that.
sure. Me too.
So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get a chance as we get closer and closer to the launch to have you back on and actually get some impressions from you about how it actually feels as a game.
I would love that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, anytime, man. I appreciate you, and I enjoy our conversations on video games and all the things. So thank you for having me on and letting me have a little soapbox moment.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was hoping for. And I'm going to have all your socials in the show notes. So if people want to find out where they can follow you and where they can see your conversations and whatnot, go ahead and give them your information so they can at least jump on that if they don't head over to the show notes.
Okay. Mainly, you'll find me on Twitter. It's at Hosssauce. That's HOSSSAUCED. And it is the same handle on Twitch. So those are my two primary platforms that I interact outside of Discord. And you're welcome to join that. You'll find all that information on Twitter and Twitch.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, man. And I will let you get going. I know you're having a good weekend. And I will get this all together for the fans of the podcast.
All right, man. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.